In the city that never sleeps, where dreams rise high as the skyscrapers, one man's ambition took him to dizzying heights before an epic fall. This story is about Marc Stuart Dreier, a smart lawyer with a knack for the law and a talent for deception. His story is not just one of a fall from grace, but a cautionary tale of unchecked greed and the search for justice in the wake of stunning betrayal. Marc Dreier, the founder of a prominent law firm, lived a life of glamour and prestige. He had a degree from Harvard and lived in an apartment on Park Avenue, hanging out with wealthy and influential people. But behind his successful image were lots of lies. Today we will examine his journey from great heights of success to being widely known as the mastermind of a Ponzi scheme and how his scandal affected trust in the legal world. Welcome to Profit Predators Business Scams Unveiled, where the glossy facade of entrepreneurship meets its shadowy counterpart. In this series, we dive deep into the world of white-collar crime, unraveling the stories of ambition turned deception. From the boardrooms to the courtroom, we expose the mechanisms and minds behind the most notorious business scams. These are tales of greed, betrayal, and the pursuit of wealth at any cost. Stay with us as we reveal the true cost of these crimes, not just in dollars, but in trust and human impact. Your journey into the darker side of business starts now. Marc Stuart Dreier was born on the 12th of May, 1950. Marc Dreier grew up in a wealthy area called the Five Towns on the South Shore of Long Island. His father was a captain in the Polish Army who got stuck in America when World War II began, while he was assigned to the New York World's Fair in 1939. He decided to stay, got married, and then started a series of movie theaters in Manhattan and on Long Island. In the 1970s, Marc's father retired to Florida, but he couldn't stay still. He began another set of theaters there, which Marc's brother, Mitchell, manages now. His mother, Mildred Dreier, was born in Brooklyn in 1920. She was born to Lithuanian and Russian Jewish immigrant parents and passed away in 2019. Since he was a child, Marc Dreier has been seen as a golden boy. Marc Dreier was in charge of the Lawrence High School Student Council and was voted most likely to succeed upon graduation. He was really clever, had good speaking skills, and unsurprisingly, he wanted to be a lawyer from a young age, especially one who argues in courtrooms. He was charming, ambitious, worked hard, and was determined to do very well. Everyone who knew him, especially his parents, expected him to achieve great things. He finished his studies at Yale University in 1972 with a Bachelor of Arts degree and got a Juris Doctor from Harvard Law School in 1975. He started working as a litigation associate at the prestigious Manhattan firm of Rosenman and Collin. There, he was supervised by Max Freund, who was not only the head of litigation, but also one of the firm's co-chairmen. At first, Dreier began by carrying Freund's briefcase. Then, he progressed to being the third chair in Freund's trials and eventually moved up to the second chair. He gained valuable experience during the years he worked closely with Freund on the Betamax case. In this case, Disney and Universal Studios sued Sony, the client of Rosenman, which made the Betamax video cassette player, alleging copyright infringement. When the trial finally ended in 1979, Dreier had become known within the firm as Max's boy. During the 1980s, Dreier lived by himself in an Upper East Side apartment that was unfortunately not well taken care of. He worked incredibly long weeks, sometimes up to 100 hours, while assisting Freund. Being a passionate fan of the New York Mets, he played on the Rosenman softball team, which was one of his few outside interests. In 1985, as expected, he became a partner. At that time, he started dating a lovely associate at Rosenman named Elisa Peters. They got married in 1987 and went on their honeymoon to Italy and France. Later, they had 2 children, a son and a daughter, both of whom are now teenagers. While Dreier's career was going well, Rosenman was struggling. When Dreier joined the firm in 1975, CBS, its largest client, was lost on the same day. Some thought that the firm never fully recovered from this setback. Older lawyers were protective of their clients, causing frustration among younger colleagues, especially litigators who started to feel restless. Some lawyers started to leave. Eventually, Rosenman merged with a larger firm in 2002. Dreier, in particular, discovered that becoming a partner didn't bring him the money or the level of responsibility he believed he deserved. In 1989, as Dreier started to look elsewhere, he got an offer from Fulbright and Jaworski, a large firm from Houston that was opening an office in New York. He eagerly accepted the opportunity to lead Fulbright's litigation section in New York. He expected more money and recognition, and he hoped to represent Fulbright's major clients from Texas in court battles. However, similar to his experience at Rosamond, he found that older lawyers were reluctant to share their clients. Dreier and his team mostly had to find their own clients, which was challenging. Dreier did land a big client, a Wall Street firm called Wertheim Schroeder and Company, which hired him in 1991 to sue Avon, the big consumer products company. The case was about a complicated securities issue regarding the price of some Avon preferred stock. Dreier tackled it enthusiastically and managed to convince a New York judge to turn it into a class action, meaning he was chosen to represent all the preferred stockholders. Dreier believed that if he won the case, the damages could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He could potentially earn tens of millions himself. However, things didn't go as planned. Dreier had been getting increasingly frustrated with management at Fulbright for a few years when, in 1994, Wertheim was bought by a British investment bank called Schroders plc. Dreier was disappointed to find out that the executives at Schroders weren't interested in continuing the lawsuit against Avon. Fulbright's management team in Houston, wanting to keep the British bank as a client, agreed and instructed Dreier to drop the case. Dreier, unwilling to give up on a case that he believed could make him very wealthy, refused angrily. When Fulbright insisted, Dreier asked the judge in charge of the case to replace him, which embarrassed both Fulbright and Schroders. In response, Schroders backed down quickly. However, Dreier's bosses ordered him to settle the case for a small amount. Although a settlement was reached, Dreier objected to it in court. At this point, Fulbright tried to sideline him and appointed another lawyer to help manage the case. In March 1995, Dreier made a bold move, sending a lengthy resignation letter to Houston and taking his main lawsuit, the Avon case, with him. He joined a small law firm, Duker & Barrett, to continue pursuing the case. However, the three lawyers didn't get along, so Dreier left within a year, now determined to work independently. Setting out on his own, Dreier leased a small office space in Rockefeller Center and brought in a few associates. Then, in 1996, he teamed up with Neil Barretts, a friend of his brother-in-law, who was practicing law in Boca Raton, Florida. Their new firm, Dreier & Barretts, struggled for a few years without making much of a mark. Dreier handled a series of cases for different small businesses, and for a while he felt satisfied with his work. Even though he managed to establish the firm, which later became Dreier LLP, he found it hard to make his practice stand out. Between 1999 and 2002, Dreier, Barretts, and Fetterman formed, setting up offices in New York and Boca Raton, with the majority of associates based in Oklahoma. Dreier managed the firm's already leased office on Park Avenue. He preferred plaintiff class action lawsuits, which generated significant revenue. Fetterman had issues with Dreier's spending, management style, and secrecy, leading to To impress others, Dreier splurged on expensive items. He bought a house in West Hampton, then another one in Quogue, and later the house next door. He bought the Seascape yacht for $18 million, which had a crew of 10 and a jacuzzi. He parked it in New York City and St. Martin. Dreier also owned a waterfront home in the Hamptons, a triplex in Manhattan, and a penthouse on Ocean Avenue in Santa Monica, California, which he rented out. He drove a Mercedes-Benz 500 in New York and an Aston Martin in California. He was a member of the Harmony Club and regularly attended charity events, maintaining a high profile. Dreier witnessed the towers fall from his office on Park Avenue. It marked the end of his 10-year battle against Avon, which concluded in November 2001. However, the judge ruled against Dreier later on, leading to the collapse of the biggest case of his life. But it wasn't just that. He and Elisa had been drifting apart, leading to more arguments between them. He and his wife separated in the year 2000, and she filed for divorce in January 2002. This strained the relationship with Dreier's Florida partner, Neil Barretts, further. Their wives were close. Dreier and Barretts decided to go their separate ways. William Fetterman also left, objecting not only to Dreier's habit of keeping things secret, he claims he never got the monthly financial statements he was promised, but also to the huge amounts Dreier spent on their Park Avenue offices. All of this caused Dreier to feel very upset. His feelings of sadness were made worse by his strong, lifelong belief that he deserved to achieve great things. He went back to his Park Avenue office that autumn with a strong resolve to attract teams of highly skilled lawyers to Dreier LLP. Each team member would receive a fixed salary along with a bonus, depending on their performance. However, unlike many other big law firms in the United States, Dreier LLP wouldn't operate as a partnership. Dreier himself would be the sole owner of the firm. The plan seemed promising on paper, but in reality there was a major problem. Each lawyer needed to be paid up front, and as more joined, Dreier had to lease a whole new floor of offices, along with furniture and computers. Every penny had to come from his own pocket, which he simply didn't have. In fact, with the financial support he had to provide for his wife, he was already living beyond his means. He tried to borrow money from banks, but they all rejected him. To start his expansion, he had to resort to borrowing from companies willing to lend money against his receivables, but at high interest rates. In 2007, Dreier expanded to Los Angeles and brought in Stanton Larry Stein, a well-known lawyer in Hollywood whose clients included Mary-Kate, Ashley Olsen, and Hilary Duff. The expansion made Dreier LLP's income go up from $60 million in 2006 to $90 million in 2007. Despite the increase in business, the Los Angeles office was actually operating at a net loss of around $1 million per month. On the 28th of September 2008, New York Magazine reported that 20 attorneys from the firm and its affiliates were chosen for New York Super Lawyers 2008 edition by Law and Politics, a legal publisher and independent researcher known for various nationwide surveys. To gather funds for the expansion and support a luxurious lifestyle, Dreier started borrowing money from hedge funds. He issued counterfeit bonds from a company called Solo Realty, owned by his client, Sheldon Solo. Dreier paid his 2 children through the company, and he used $10 million from the firm's money at New York's Gagosian Gallery in 2008. To make the deception seem legitimate, Dreier created a false balance sheet and offered interest rates slightly higher than usual. At first, he thought the profits from his law firm would cover the loans. However, as the expansion expenses grew and he indulged in a lavish lifestyle, his firm transformed into a typical Ponzi scheme. On the 8th of December 2008, the Securities and Exchange Commission accused Dreier of fraud due to an elaborate scheme that involved raising over $113 million from the sale of fake promissory notes. The complaint stated that since at least October 2008, Dreier had been promoting fake promissory notes, including ones from a New York-based real estate development company, to hedge funds and other private investment funds. He successfully completed at least 3 sales, convincing buyers that the notes were legitimate. On the 13th of July 2009, Dreier was sentenced to 20 years in prison, with the order to begin his term immediately. Judge Jed S. Rakoff dismissed the prosecutor's request for a maximum sentence, stating, "He is not Mr. Bernard Madoff from any analysis, and that's why I can't understand why the government is asking for 145 years." Dreier addressed the court, his family, his clients, and the lawyers who worked for him, expressing his deep remorse. "I'm sorry, deeply sorry for the harm and the sadness that I have caused to so many people." In a letter to the court, Dreier admitted, "I recall only that I was desperate for some measure of the success that I felt had eluded me. I lost my perspective and my moral grounding, and really, in a sense, I just lost my mind." During his plea hearing on the 11th of May 2009, Dreier confessed, "I engineered a scheme to issue and sell fictitious promissory notes purportedly issued by companies in the United States and Canada." He pleaded guilty to swindling $380 million from various hedge funds by selling worthless financial instruments without any plea agreement with the government. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission also filed a separate civil suit against him for stealing funds from an escrow account belonging to one of the firm's bankruptcy clients. An amended indictment on the 17th of March 2009 added an 8th count of money laundering to the charges and $700 million in forfeitures. From 2004 to December 2008, Dreier sold to funds and others approximately $700 million worth of fake developer notes and fake pension plan notes. The 8-count indictment states his deception began in 2004. Dreier provided false financial statements to the purchasers of his notes, arranged meetings for investors with people impersonating officials from purported issuers of the notes, sold fake promissory notes purportedly issued by a Canadian pension plan, and embezzled more than $400 million from his client escrow account. Dreier may also face criminal charges in Canada for impersonating an in-house lawyer at the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan in connection with an attempted sale of financial instruments worth US $44.7 million, for which he was arrested. He was released on bail, only to be arrested again by U.S. authorities upon returning to New York. During his plea hearing on the 11th of May 2009, Judge Rakoff condemned his actions, stating, "He has disgraced the honorable profession of law. There are 100 good reasons why Mr. Dreier should be jailed." By his own admission here today, he has shown that he is to be ranked with those who have committed some of the most egregious frauds in history. Ultimately, the judge ruled that Dreier should remain free on bail pending his sentencing hearing on the 13th of July 2009. Initially released on bail on the 13th of February 2009, Dreier was placed under 24-hour house arrest with armed guards and electronic monitoring, with a $10 million bond co-signed by his son and mother. Despite this, he faced restrictions on communication and visitors, and a retired FBI agent was among those monitoring him. On the 22nd of January 2009, U.S. Magistrate Judge Douglas Eaton modified his earlier ruling and set the bond at $20 million, requiring Dreier to secure bail with $10 million in cash or property and include at least 4 co-signers who would be required to pay the money if Dreier fled. Dreier would also have to submit to electronic monitoring and see a psychiatrist twice a week. He had asked to be freed on a $10 million bond and be subject to electronic monitoring. He agreed that his mother and his 19-year-old son Spencer would co-sign the bond. Dreier was then put on house arrest. He is set to be released from federal prison on the 11th of November 2026. Thank you for joining us on Profit Predators Business Scams Unveiled. Today's journey through the intricate webs of deceit and ambition reminds us of the price of unbridled greed. As we conclude, remember, awareness and integrity are our best defenses in a world where profit can often precede principle. For more insights and stories that peel back the layers of the business world's darker side, subscribe and stay tuned. Together, we'll continue to share stories that shock and shape our marketplaces. Until next time, stay informed and always question the integrity behind the profits.